Mira Ashvale had exactly 4 seconds to taste the Alpha King's wine before the guard rotation reached the cellar door, and she was already 2 seconds in. The goblet was heavier than she expected. Silver with a stag worked into the stem, and the wine inside smelled wrong. Not spoiled. Wrong. Underneath the cherry and clove, there was a green sharpness, like crushed stems, like the monk's hood her mother had taught her to fear before Mira was old enough to spell her own name. So she did the thing no sane kennel girl would ever do. She lifted the king's cup to her own lips and drank. The numbness hit her mouth on the second heartbeat. Faint. A tingle at the edge of her tongue, like winter air. Wolfsbane. Diluted, slow, patient. Someone was poisoning the Alpha King one polite sip at a time. That was when the cellar door opened, and Kyle Draven, Alpha King of the Iron Vale, ruler of 9 packs and the mountains between them, found a small Omega in a patched grey dress standing in his private cellar, with his own goblet pressed to her mouth. Here is what Mira did not know, what she would not know for a long time, though you should know it now. The enormous black wolf that would come limping to her kennel door 3 nights later. The one she would feed and stitch and bathe, and eventually let sleep on her feet like an overgrown hound, was this same man, this same king. And he told himself every single night that he was only there to investigate her. I was lying. But we are getting ahead of the story. In the cellar, the torchlight caught the wine on her lip. Kael's guards drew steel behind, and the girl, instead of dropping the cup, instead of screaming or begging, held up one finger. One finger to the Alpha King, as if asking him to wait. "Don't drink this," she said. Her voice shook, but the words came out anyway. "There's wolfsbane in the wax. I think it's in the wax." Captain Bren, a broad woman with a scar through her eyebrow, laughed once, short and disbelieving. "The taster cleared that cask this morning, girl." The taster drinks from the tap barrel. Mira's finger was still up. Her hand trembled like a leaf in wind, but the finger stayed. This came from the sealed casks, the green wax ones. My lips have gone numb. Yours would too, Your Majesty. A little more every month, until one day your wolf just wouldn't come when you called. The cellar went very quiet. Because 3 weeks ago, on the North Ridge, Kyle Draven had called his wolf during an ambush, and the shift had come a full breath too slow, and an arrow meant for his heart had opened his shoulder instead. He had told no one. Not Bren. Not the healers. No one alive knew his wolf was failing, except, apparently, this girl who smelled of lavender and hound and cheap tallow soap, who had just poisoned herself on purpose to prove a point. "Who are you?" Kyle said. It did not sound like a question. "Nobody, Majesty. I keep the kennels. I mix the salves for the hounds." She finally lowered the cup, set it down with both hands. Careful. The way you set down something that has already hurt someone. "My mother was Ellen Ashvale. She was your father's taster. Wolfsbane numbs the lips first. She taught me that before it killed her." Bren's sword lowered an inch. Kale stared at the girl for a long moment. The scent of lavender was doing something strange to the back of his skull, something warm and inconvenient, and he shoved it away. "Lock the cellar," he said. "Nobody touches the green wax casks. And you." He looked at Mira, at the stubborn, terrified line of her shoulders. "Drink milk, a full cup, then go back to your kennels and speak of this to no one." She bobbed something that was almost a curtsy and fled. Cale watched the door swing shut behind her. "Someone in my own keep is bleeding wolfsbane into my wine," he thought. "And the only person who noticed is a kennel girl who drank poison for a king who has never once spoken her name." His wolf, deep in his chest, rolled over and pointed itself at the door like a compass finding north. "Follow her," it said. "Absolutely not," said Kyle. 3 nights later, he followed her. He told himself it was strategy. The girl knew about the poison, which meant she was either the most useful person in the keep or part of the plot, and a king could not simply summon a kennel girl for questioning without the poisoner noticing. But a stray wolf could watch her. A stray wolf could get close. It was, Kyle assured himself, as he slipped out the postern gate and let the shift take him, black fur rolling over his shoulders under the autumn moon, purely an intelligence operation. The intelligence operation lasted 11 minutes before it fell apart. Mira found him at the kennel fence just after midnight, a black wolf the size of a pony, holding one forepaw off the ground. The arrow graze on his shoulder had torn open during the shift. He had planned to observe her from the shadows. Instead, he was bleeding in her woodpile, and she was walking toward him with a lantern, no weapon, no fear, murmuring the low-nonsense sounds she used on frightened hounds. "Oh, look at you," she breathed. The lantern light showed him her face properly for the first time. Brown eyes, a smudge of ash on her jaw, hair escaping its braid. "Look at the size of you. Did somebody hurt you, love? Love?" Cale's entire brain went white and silent, like a field after snowfall. "Leave," said the king in him. "She has seen you. Stand up and leave." "She called us love," said the wolf, and lay down. What happened next, Kyle would replay for the rest of his life. She did not run for the guards. She did not throw stones at the monstrous predator in her yard. She went inside and came back with a needle, a pot of the salve she mixed for the hounds, and the single sausage that was meant to be her supper. He could smell that it was her only one. He could smell the thin barley soup she had eaten instead, 3 nights running. She fed the sausage to him first. Then she stitched his shoulder, humming, her hands steady now the way they had not been in the cellar. And Kyle Draven, who had once taken a challenger's fangs to the throat without flinching, lay in the mud of a kennel yard and let a girl half his size sew him shut. "There," she said, tying off the thread. "You'll do. You can sleep by the woodpile if you like, but if you eat any of my hounds, I'll be very disappointed in you, and you seem like the sort who'd feel bad about it." I should leave, Cale thought. I am the Alpha King. I have a council at dawn. I have a poisoner to catch. I will stay exactly 1 more minute. He woke at sunrise with his head on her boot, through the open door of her tiny room, where he had apparently migrated in the night like some enormous, shameless cat. She was still asleep, sitting up, one hand resting between his ears. "I did not make the dawn council. I was inspecting the lower grounds," he told Bren, when she found him striding back through the postern gate with mud on his cloak and a suspicious calm in his eyes. "Thoroughly." Bren looked at him for a long moment. "There's a hound hair on your Majesty's collar. The keep has hounds. It is a keep." It became, in the way of these things, a routine. And the routine, in the way of these things, escalated. The second week, the laundry started going missing. Specifically, one grey shawl, threadbare at the corner, that smelled of lavender, that vanished off Mira's washing line in broad daylight. She searched the whole yard. 2 days, The black wolf trotted into the kennel with the shawl folded, actually folded, in his jaws, and a fat dead pheasant laid across the top of it like an apology with legs. "Did you steal my shawl?" Mira demanded, hands on hips. The wolf set down the pheasant, sat, and gazed at the middle distance with the studied innocence of a creature reviewing his options. "You did. You absolute bandit." She was trying not to laugh and losing. "You stole my shawl, and now you're bribing me with a bird." "It worked," noted the wolf. That same afternoon, in the council chamber, a steward reported that a large black wolf had been seen raiding the servants' washing lines, and asked whether the king wished a hunt organized. "Hang whoever is responsible," said Kyle Draven, without looking up from his papers. A pause. "Eventually. I'm sure it's harmless." Next item. The third week was the bath. It had rained for 2 days, and the wolf arrived at her door, looking like a swamp had grown legs, and stood there dripping and tragic, until Mira sighed, rolled up her sleeves, and hauled the big washing trough into the yard. "In, Moon," she said. "You're not sleeping inside like that." He got in. The Alpha King of the Iron Vale, terror of the northern passes, folded himself into a hound trough, while a kennel girl poured warm water over his head and scrubbed him with her own lavender soap, scolding him gently the whole time, and his wolf was so drunk with happiness that Kyle lost the argument with himself before it even started. When she worked her fingers through the thick fur of his ruff, he made a sound he would deny until his dying day. She laughed so hard she sat down in the mud. The next morning, Captain Bren stopped mid-report, leaned in and sniffed. "Majesty, you smell of lavender." "It is a new polish," said the king, "for my armor." "You're not wearing armor." "The scent lingers. That is the point of polish. Continue your report." The fourth week, the wolf stopped pretending about the woodpile entirely and simply climbed into her bed. Mira woke one frost-bitten night to find 180 pounds of black wolf stretched along her cot, radiating heat like a hearthstone, taking up precisely all of the mattress that was not already occupied by her. "This is not sustainable," she informed him, muffled from the sliver of bed remaining. "You are aware you're not a lapdog." He put his head on her stomach. "Fine, but only because it's cold." "I have a bed," Kyle thought hazily, listening to her heartbeat slow into sleep. "I have the largest bed in the Iron Vale. It has furs from 4 kingdoms. He did not move. His wolf was purring, which wolves cannot do, and doing it anyway. The near disaster came in the 5th week. She was changing the dressing on his shoulder, and her fingers paused on the scar. She frowned. She had been to the harvest court once, standing in the back with the other servants, when the king had accepted the oath of the Eastern Pax with his collar open, and there had been a scar just there, just that shape, high on the left shoulder. "That's odd," she murmured. "The king has a mark like this. Same place." She looked into the wolf's amber eyes. The wolf looked back with an expression of profound vacancy. "Same side, even." A long pause. Then she laughed at herself and patted his neck. "Listen to me. Next I'll be saying you have his eyes." The wolf did not move for 4 full minutes and left very early that night, and Kyle spent the next morning drafting a royal decree about kennel security that he never sent, because his own guards would have wanted to know why. By the 6th week, something had shifted that was not fur. It was the night she talked to him. Really talked. She had a candle stub going, and a cup of the tea she made from windfall apples, and the wolf's great head was in her lap, and she started talking the way people only talk to creatures they believe cannot repeat it. "I was Thornmere Pack once," she said. Her fingers moved slowly through his ruff, up past the birch valley. When you come of age, your wolf is supposed to rise. Everyone gathers. There's a fire. Your family stands behind you. Her hand stopped. Mine never came. My wolf. I stood by that fire until it burned down to coals and nothing rose in me at all. They have a word for what I am. Hollow. She said the word carefully, like touching a scar to check if it still hurt. The Alpha gave my mother a choice. Stay with the pack, or keep me. She kept me. She brought me here and tasted wine for the old king to feed us, and the wine killed her, and everyone said what a loyal servant, and nobody ever learned her name past Ellen the taster. The wolf in her lap had gone very still. That's why I drank it, she said quietly. The king's wine. Everyone thinks I was brave. I wasn't brave. I smelled monk's hood, and I thought, if I'm hollow, if there's no wolf in me, and no pack behind me, then at least this is a thing I know. This one thing my mother left me. And for one heartbeat I could matter. She laughed, small and wet. I told a wolf that. You're the only one who knows, and you can't tell anyone. That's the joke, isn't it? The only one who listens to me is someone who can't speak. Cale Draven lay in the lap of the only person in the Iron Vale who had ever poisoned herself for him and understood two things with total clarity. The first was that he was going to marry this girl. The second was that when she found out who had been listening, she was going to be so very, rightfully, furious. He should have told her that night. He has said so himself, since, many times. But the next morning, two things arrived at the keep, and both of them were trouble. The first was Lady Odalis of the Frostfang pack, tall and silver-blonde and magnificent, escorted by 40 riders and a formal proposal of alliance through marriage, endorsed enthusiastically by the Lord Chancellor Veyric, who had spent months explaining to the council that a king without a Luna was a kingdom without an heir. The second was Tobin, the falconer's new apprentice, 19 and freckled and hopeless, who took one look at the girl who kept the kennels and began finding reasons to walk past them roughly 11 times a day. Cale handled the first with cold diplomacy. He handled the second considerably worse. I was crossing the lower yard, in his own shape, in his own crown, when he saw the boy lean on Mira's fence and offer her half a honey loaf, still warm, and saw Mira laugh, and something ancient and possessive stood up inside Kael's chest with its hackles raised. The goblet in the king's hand cracked, not shattered, cracked in the grip of his fingers with a sound like ice on a pond. "Majesty?" said Bren carefully. "That boy," said the Alpha King, in a voice that came from somewhere below the mountain roots, "is standing on the kennel fence. The fence is not built for standing. It is a hazard. Shall I have the fence reinforced, Majesty? Have the boy reassigned? The muse at the Eastern Lodge needs staff." A pause. The king breathed. Somewhere in him, a wolf was howling breach of territory, and the man was fighting it to a draw. After the honey loaf, let him give her the loaf first. Bren, who was not a fool, and who had been counting hound hairs and lavender mornings for 6 weeks, said nothing at all, and smiled at the ground. Lady Odalis was a sharper problem. She found Mira in the west corridor, carrying salve pots, and looked her over the way one prices a horse. "You're the one," Odalis said, "the cellar girl, the one they whisper saved the king's life." She tipped her wine cup, slowly, deliberately, and let it pour down the front of Mira's dress. "Clumsy of me. Fetch someone to clean this floor." And for one strange heartbeat, Odalis's face did something complicated. something that was almost flinching. She had been drilled since she was 12 years old on how a Luna secures a court, taught by her mother that kindness in a rival's presence was a wound you gave yourself, and some small buried part of her watched the wine drip off this Omega's chin and hated the lesson, and did it anyway. Then the heartbeat passed, and her face was marble again, and she walked on. Mira stood in the corridor, dripping, and did not cry until she was back with her hounds. That night, she pressed her face into black fur and said, "I know what I am. I know." But she didn't have to enjoy it. And the wolf under her hands trembled with the effort of not becoming a king right there in the straw and burning Frostfang's alliance to the ground. It was Mira, in the end, who forced everything into the light, because Mira had never stopped thinking about the wax. She had gone quietly to the chandler's shed, where the sealing wax was mixed, and found the ledger, not a confession, just columns, green wax, royal casks, and a separate resin ordered for it, purchased through the Chancellor's household, listed in a clerk's tidy hand as pine oil. But pine oil is golden and smells of forests, and the flask Mira found at the back of the shelf was thin and grey-green and made her fingertips tingle straight through the cork. Wolfsbane oil, kneaded into the wax that rimmed every cask the king drank from. Not enough to kill. Enough, month after month, to strangle the wolf inside the man, until the day the Alpha King reached for his shift before witnesses and nothing came, and a hollow king, as everyone knew, could be lawfully challenged. She was still holding the flask when she heard the shed door close behind her. Chancellor Veric stood there with two of his men, and his voice, when he spoke, was almost gentle. "You are your mother's daughter, after all," he said. "Hélène could smell a lie in a cask at 40 paces. I was sorry, you know, when she died. I signed the order for her wages to continue to her child. Did anyone ever tell you that?" "No. Nobody tells servants anything." Something moved behind his eyes, old and tired. Then it closed. "Take the flask from her." Quietly. They were not quiet. Mira threw the salve pot, screamed, kicked a shelf of tallow down on the first man, and made it exactly 4 steps into the yard before the second caught her braid. And that was when the night came apart. The black wolf hit the man like a landslide. Myra heard bone and a scream, and then the second attacker's knife found the wolf's flank, and Mira shouted, "No, not him!" And the wolf turned to shield her from the third man coming through the door, and there was not time, not in wolf shape, not at that angle, and so between one stride and the next, the wolf simply stopped being a wolf. Black fur tore away into a man's shoulders. Paws became hands, one of which caught the assassin's descending arm and snapped it. And Mira, pressed against the shed wall with her heart in her mouth, watched the stray she had stitched and bathed and fed her supper to rise to his full height in the torchlight, blood on his flank, murder in his amber eyes, wearing the unmistakable face of Kael Draven, Alpha King of the Iron Vale. The yard filled with guards. Veric did not run. He stood quite still amid the shouting, looking at the king, looking at the ruin of years of patience, and reached into his coat and set something small on the chopping block. A carved wooden wolf, child-sized, its ears worn smooth by small hands. "My son whittled that," he said, to no one in particular. "Alden. He died in your father's border war, escorting wine south, 19. Your father toasted the victory with that wine and never once learned his name." He looked at Mira then, dripping tallow and shaking, and something like respect crossed the ruin of his face. "You drank without being asked, girl. My son also served without being asked. Kings drink either way." He held out his wrists for the irons himself. But Mira was not looking at Varric. Mira was looking at the king. "The wolf," she said. Her voice was very flat and very quiet, which anyone who knew her would have recognized as far more dangerous than shouting. 6 weeks. Mira, I fed you my supper." Her voice began to climb. "I stitched you. I bathed you in a hound trough. I let you sleep on my bed. I told you." She stopped. The color drained out of her face as the full accounting arrived. "I told you everything. The fire. My mother. The word. I told the wolf things I've never said out loud in my life, because I thought no one was listening, and you were the king the entire time." "Yes," said Kyle. Someone had brought him a cloak. He didn't reach for her. His guards had never seen him stand so still. "All of it. The first night I told myself I was investigating you. That lasted 11 minutes. The shawl, that was me. The pheasant was me. The laundry raids they reported in council, I ordered the culprit hanged. That was also me. I missed 4 dawn councils sleeping on your floor. I broke a goblet because a boy gave you bread." He took a breath. "I could have told you 100 times. I didn't, because the wolf got to lie in your lap and listen. And Mira, no one has ever spoken to me like I was safe to speak to. Not once. Not in my whole life. So I stole it. Like the shawl. I am not proud of it, but I will not pretend I regret the listening. Only the lying." The whole yard held its breath. "Milk," Mira said. "What?" "The night in the cellar. You told me to drink milk and speak to no one. You've known I mattered since the cellar. And you let me spend 6 weeks believing the only creature in this keep who cared for me couldn't speak." She stepped past him, past the guards, past the Chancellor in his irons. At the gate she stopped without turning around. "Your stitches tore. Have a real healer look at it. I'm off duty." And the Alpha King of the Iron Veil let her go. Because she was right. And because Bren had a hand on his arm. And because some apologies you cannot chase down. You have to earn them standing still. For 3 days he sent nothing. No summons, no gifts, no flowers, no decrees. The keep buzzed like a kicked hive with the trial of the Chancellor, and Lady Odalis's party packed with glacial dignity, and through all of it, the king signed papers and questioned conspirators and did not go to the kennels, and every night his wolf sat inside his ribs, facing south toward the lavender, and grieved. On the 4th night, there was a scratch at Mira's door. She opened it to find the black wolf sitting in the frost, ears down, and behind him, laid neatly on her step, one grey shawl, freshly laundered, and one live pheasant in a wicker cage, looking extremely put out. Mira looked at the wolf for a long, long moment. "No," she said, "not like this. If you want to be forgiven, you come back as the man. The man is the one who owes me." The shift this time was slow, almost shy. And then the most powerful alpha on the continent stood in a kennel yard in the frost and knelt. Not the graceful half-bow of court. Both knees in the mud at the feet of an omega in a patched dress. "Ellen Ashvale's daughter," he said. "Mira, you asked why nobody ever learned your mother's name. I've spent 3 days in the archives. Her name is being carved on the founder's wall by the great hearth, beside the wardens and the generals, because she held this kingdom together with her own body, and so did you." His voice cracked just slightly on the next part. "My wolf chose you the night you fed him your supper. The man took longer, because the man is a fool. But we are both here now, both of us. Everything I am, kneeling in a kennel yard, and we will kneel here all winter, if that is what it takes." Mira looked down at him. The frost was settling in his black hair. Somewhere behind her a hound whined. "Get up," she said at last, and her voice wobbled. "You'll tear the stitches. Again. Honestly. Between the two of you, you're the worst patient I've ever had." "Between the two of us," said the king, rising, hope breaking over his face like sunrise. "We are one patient. You're the worst one of him, then." It was 3 weeks later, before the assembled packs of the Iron Veil, at the sentencing of Chancellor Varick, that the court got its answer. Varick was stripped of name and lands and sent to the far northern watch to serve the border his son had died on, and the little carved wolf went with him. And no one, not even the king, said the sentence was wrong or right, because it was neither. It was only just. And when Lady Odalis's uncle rose to ask, delicately, whether the question of a Luna might now proceed, Cael Draven came down from the dais, walked the full length of the hall past every noble in the Vale, and stopped in front of the kennel girl standing in the servants' row. "She is mine," said the Alpha King, in the voice that shook the banners, "if she will have me. And I have been hers since the night she stitched a stray." And Mira, who had once stood at the back of this same hall in wine-stained wool, took his offered hand in front of 9 packs and said, "Someone has to taste your wine." The bond, when it came like spring. And on the night the mating mark closed on her shoulder, Mira woke gasping in the great bed with its furs from 4 kingdoms, because something was rising in her chest that had never risen before, warm and silver and late, so terribly late, but not hollow, never hollow, only waiting, all these years, for a pack worth rising for. Her wolf, when she finally stood trembling on 4 pale legs in the moonlit garden, was small and moon-grey, and the great black wolf circled her once and pressed his forehead to hers, and if wolves could laugh, both of them were laughing. Word travels. Before the first snow, an envoy arrived from the Thornmere pack, past the Birch Valley, with formal congratulations to the new Luna and a delicately worded hope for warmer relations. Mira read the letter twice at the still-room table. Then she packed a crate with her own hands, fever tincture and lungwort salve and willow bark, everything a pack needs to get its pups through a hard winter, and sent it north with the envoy, and no invitation, and no reply, and never thought about them at bedtime again. Winter closed over the Iron Veil, and on a deep snow evening you could find the still room by its light alone, herbs drying in the rafters, fire snapping, a Luna in a patched work dress she refused to give up, and across her lap the head of an enormous black wolf who had a perfectly good throne room and had never once used it in the evenings. On the table sat a goblet of spiced wine, silver, with a stag worked into the stem. Mira reached over and, from pure old habit, took a small testing sip. One amber eye opened and fixed on her, over the rim of the cup, catching her mid-sip, exactly as it had begun. She laughed, wine on her lip, lavender in the air, snow ticking soft against the window, and tipped the goblet gently down where he could reach. "No poison," she said. "Only honey." The wolf drank and laid his great head back in her lap, and the fire burned low, and neither of them moved for a long, long time.